Now, if you are a regular viewer of my channel, then you have most likely watched my chapter 264 review video. And if that's the case, then I want to apologize because... I can't believe I'm about to say this. I was wrong.
What?
I spent half that video waffling on about how the train station at the end of 264 is probably Yuji's domain. In all fairness, I was incredibly sleep deprived and pressed for time, but yeah, I was wrong. It's definitely not Yuji's domain expansion. And I think most of you guys have realized that too. What many of you don't seem to have clocked onto though, is that both Sukuna and Yuji are likely already dead. That's right, after some thorough examination of this chapter with my fellow YouTuber Jaff Talks, I believe I have uncovered exactly what is going on here. And it is tragic. Some of you may think you know what I'm getting at here, but trust me, it goes even deeper than you think. These 2 pages of the train station may actually tell us exactly how Jujutsu Kaisen is going to end, including details about who will kill Sukuna, what Megami's status is, what will happen with the merger, and also who will live to see the end of Jujutsu Kaisen. Not to mention that it sets up the possibility of the long-awaited Heian era flashbacks. So without any further yap, let's get straight into this theory about why Sukuna and Yuji are already dead. So, if you are not a crippling idiot, unlike me, then you will have clocked onto the fact that this train station is not Yuji's domain expansion. I mean, it doesn't look like it has anything to do with Yuji's curse techniques, it doesn't explain why Sukuna is back in Yuji's body, and it's simply not that menacing. Plus, Sukuna would definitely have thrown up Hollow Wicker Basket if it was a true domain expansion. So if it's not his domain, then what the fuck is it? Well, I believe that these last couple pages actually happen a little bit in the future after Sukuna has already been defeated. I think there is a good chance that we don't actually see this train station again for a couple of chapters, since Gege is going to need to show the final stage of the fight and what led to this. And of course, we all want to see what Yuji's domain expansion actually is. So in the upcoming chapters, we are likely going to see what Yuji's domain expansion actually is and how it will lead to Sukuna ending up dead inside Yuji's body. Actually, this whole idea perfectly parallels Gojo's death in chapter 236. Last time we saw Gojo, he was all fine and dandy, and then boom, suddenly he's in the airport sitting in exactly the same position that Sukuna is now. Actually, the parallels between these 2 pages are so good that it practically confirms this entire theory. Anyway, just as it happened with Gojo, I believe we are getting this little train station sequence following Sukuna's defeat, and then we're gonna cut back to how he actually ended up here in the first place. Oh, and spoiler alert, I do not think it was Yuji that killed him. But before getting into all of that, we first have to go back to the fight and figure out exactly what happened that led to them ending up in this Innate Domain looking train station. And what better place to start with than Yuji Itadori's true domain expansion. All we have seen of Yuji's domain is a hand sign, nothing more, not even a name, but we do at least know that it will eventually lead to Sukuna's defeat, because train station. That being said though, I don't think the domain is actually what kills him. No, I think Yuji's domain is what leads to Sukuna suddenly ending up in Yuji's body again. Now, let's be real, we don't know what the fuck Yuji's domain is for sure, but we can definitely make a pretty damn good guess. Sukuna spent the entire last 2 chapters waffling on about how Yuji's soul dismantle is incredibly fatal, but how it won't be a problem for him as long as he just doesn't get hit. Basically, Yuji needs to guarantee that his soul dismantles hit Sukuna in order to win. And what's the best way to guarantee that a hit lands in the world of Jujutsu Kaisen? Yeah, a domain expansion. So I think it's pretty obvious that Yuji's domain is going to work exactly like Malevolent Shrine, except all of his slashes will target the soul. Or in this case, it will target the boundary between Sukuna and Megami souls. Now, obviously, a sure hit that targets the soul is surpassed in brokenness only by Infinite Void, so that's already a huge Yuji upscale. Please do not jump the gun though. As of now, it's incredibly unlikely to actually have an open barrier, and it's probably not as refined as some existing domains. If Sukuna's technique wasn't currently burnt out, then Sukuna almost definitely would win the domain clash just by experience. Since Sukuna does not have Malevolent Shrine right now though, the domain is actually better off being a closed barrier since it would trap Sukuna inside. Basically, even if Yuji miraculously could open the barrier, he really shouldn't. The point is, Yuji is most likely gonna trap Sukuna in a soul-striking Malevolent Shrine. Now remember, Sukuna doesn't have a domain to counter with right now, but he does have all 4 arms, meaning that he will likely use Hollow Wicker Basket and then fight Yuji just like he did in Yuta's domain. So Yuji is gonna have to 1v1 the King of Curses in his domain until he does enough damage to make Sukuna drop Hollow Wicker Basket. And surprise, surprise, the outcome of this crazy 1v1 will likely result in Yuji successfully destroying Hollow Wicker Basket and finally tearing Megami away from Sukuna. What follows that though is where shit gets really crazy. As we saw from chapter 263, when the barrier between Sukuna and Megami's soul is heavily damaged, he begins to throw up his fingers. So if that barrier is totally shredded, then it follows that Sukuna will throw up every single finger, leading to Megami being totally freed and regaining control of his body. Now, many people believe that Megami cannot regain his normal body, but I think that's very obvious obviously untrue thanks to Wii's explanation of the body and the soul. Once only Megami's soul remains inside his body, then he can open that box that Wii described, leading to his body resuming the shape of his soul. Then bam, normal Megami returns. I imagine this whole box mechanic is actually how Sukuna transformed into his Heian form in the first place. Anyway, now that the goal of separating the fingers from Megami has been completed, it's time for stage 2 of Yuji Itadori's plan, Sukuna's execution. It all circles back to the original goal of Jujutsu Kaisen, for Yuji to consume all of Sukuna's fingers and then be executed, taking Sukuna down to hell with him. To Yuji, the risk of leaving Sukuna as fingers is simply way too great, so I believe that he will yet again consume all of Sukuna's fingers and become his vessel. Hence why we see Yujikuna in the train station panels. Now, I'm not gonna lie, if you love Yuji Itadori like I do, or you're a crazed Sukuna glazer, then you're probably not gonna like what follows. Since we're on the topic of going full circle, I think it's time we address the matter of who is going to finally execute Yuji Itadori and Ryomen Sukuna, sending them both to that train station. Like I said, the original goal of Jujutsu Kaisen was to have Yuji consume as many fingers as possible before executing him, and I think that's exactly what's about to happen. Following Yuji's domain and becoming Sukuna's vessel once again, Yuji Itadori will likely be executed by one of two people. The first possibility is Megami Fushiguro, and the second possibility is Yuta Okotsu. Megami seems like the most likely option because, besides Yuji, he definitely has the most reason to want Sukuna dead and buried. It would also neatly parallel Megami's reluctance to kill Yuji right at the beginning of the story, which effectively started this whole fiasco in the first place. The other option is Yuta, because Yuji did personally request for him to finish him off if needed, and Yuta did agree. Also, we can't be certain that Megami won't come out of there a vegetable from Infinite Void, so Yuta is definitely the next best option. Basically, it will most definitely be one of these two characters who execute Yuji Itadori and Ryomen Sukuna, ending that side of the story for good. Long story short, the train station pages actually don't happen until everything above has taken place, meaning that they are both already dead. As a lot of people have already guessed, the train station is very likely to be Yuji Itadori's Innate Domain, and this conversation between Yuji and Sukuna is likely going to result in us finally seeing Sukuna flashbacks. This whole situation is a great ending for Sukuna because Yuji is effectively doing to him what Sukuna did to Jogo and Kashimo after beating them. This will be how Sukuna is finally taught about love. And no, I don't think we're gonna get any kind of talk no jutsu bullshit where Sukuna turns good or anything dumb like that. It will simply be Yuji Itadori showing Sukuna why he lost and why his entire selfless monster mindset was simply inferior to Yuji Itadori's mindset. Obviously, I can't predict what kind of flashbacks we're gonna see or what's gonna happen in them, but all that really matters is that we are very likely finally going to get some form of flashback on their little train journey. Another very tragic possibility that I have considered here is that we may end up seeing some very familiar faces in Yuji's post-death Innate Domain. Gojo ended up in an airport full of his deceased people who had a big impact on his life, and strangely enough, so did Jogo when he saw Hanami and Dagon. So make sure to keep your tissues close because Gojo, Nobara, Wasuki, Junpei, and also maybe Kenjaku are very likely to make an appearance in my opinion. The point is though that this conversation and trip down memory lane will be all for the purpose of Yuji Itadori teaching Sukuna why he sucks. The end. Now, I genuinely believe that pretty much everything I've talked about so far is what Gege has in store for us, and honestly, I really like it. With Sukuna's story being wrapped up and Megami being freed though, it only leaves one big plot point left for us to cover, the merger. I think with the very clear direction that Gege is taking this, it's obvious to see that the merger will not simply be a big scary curse monster for them to all fight. I've seen some people saying that Sukuna and Yuji will make another binding vow to be revived again and then fight the merger, but I personally think that's dumb as fuck. What's much more likely is the conclusion that I have been predicting for a very long time. Megami will use the merger as a way to solve the root cause of all their suffering and rid cursed energy from the world, or at least maybe find a way to prevent it from randomly pooling and creating curses. I have absolutely no clue how this can be done, but my best guess would be to have his new divine dogma Haraga adapt to the merger in order to change its function. Realistically though, the merger side of things has always been a massive question mark, and to be honest, it still is. That's just my best guess. To summarize though, chapter 264's train station pages actually occur after Sukuna's defeat. I believe Yuji will tear Sukuna away from Megami using his soul-striking domain, then he will become Sukuna's vessel yet again, and then finally be executed by either Megami or Yuta. Sukuna and Yuji will take a trip down Flashback Avenue, and we will maybe even see some old friends there. And that pretty much does it for this whole theory. Oh, and also chapter 265 is very likely to be a Hikari vs Arame chapter, because there is no way that Sukuna dies before Arame does. Okay, now that's everything. As always, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Feel free to join the Discord and follow me on Twitter, links below. Thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you in a bit.